A long time ago, in the peaceful village of Umuaka, there lived a beautiful girl named Amarachi. She was the first daughter of Mazi Obina and Neka, a hardworking woman who was known in the village market for her booming fabric business. Amarachi had three younger sisters, Oluchi, Kosiso, and Chizum. And even though they were not rich, their home was filled with laughter and peace. Before Mazi Obina married Neka, he was a poor farmer with no land of his own. It was Neka who supported him. She helped him rent a small farm, gave him money from her business, and even introduced him to her uncle, who helped him start a yam plantation. Obina loved her dearly and praised her as his pillar of strength. When Amarachi was born, they were overjoyed. Obina danced around the compound, shouting that his daughter would bring blessings to the family. The villagers celebrated with them and drank palm wine under the mango tree in their compound. Life was sweet. But things changed when Neka gave birth to their second child, another girl. Obina's face fell. He tried to hide it, but Neka could see the disappointment in his eyes. "I was hoping for a son," he said that night. Neka held his hand and said, "Don't worry, my love. The next one will be a boy." She did all she could. She drank bitter herbs, prayed in the shrine, and visited a well-known herbalist in the next village. Everyone said he had helped barren women bear sons. But after months of struggle, when Neka gave birth again, it was another baby girl. That was the day Obina began to change. He no longer helped Neka in the market. He stopped spending time with the children. He stopped laughing. He didn't hit anyone, but the silence was worse. He would eat alone, talk only when necessary, and began sleeping in a separate room. Neka begged him to give her another chance. "Just one more, Obina. I will try again. Please." She became desperate. She drank more strange mixtures. Some made her dizzy. Others made her vomit blood. But she kept going, believing that a baby boy would bring back her husband's love. Months later, she became pregnant again. The villagers whispered about her condition. Her face had become pale, and her body was weak. Still, she pushed herself, walking to the market every day, selling her fabrics under the sun. The day came. She gave birth to another girl. That night, Obina packed his bag and left the house. 2 weeks later, he returned with another woman, a younger, fair-skinned lady named Adalgo. She had wide hips and was known to cook delicious food. Obina said nothing to Neka. He just cleared the back room and moved the new wife in. Neka's heart shattered. The man she had built her life with, shared her dreams with, and sacrificed for, had turned his back on her because she didn't give him a son. Adalgo walked around like she owned the place. She gave orders, insulted the children, and even took over Neka's spot in the kitchen. Obina supported her in everything. A few months later, Adalgo gave birth to a baby boy. Obina threw a big celebration and invited everyone, even the elders. He named the boy Obina Jr. and carried him everywhere like a crown. From that day, Obina stopped speaking to Neka and her daughters. He didn't pay their school fees anymore. He stopped giving them food. Neka had to send Amarachi and Oluchi to hawk her fabrics in the market while she took care of the younger ones. One day, while Neka was returning from the market, she saw Adalgo shouting at Amarachi. "What is going on here?" Neka asked, her heart racing. "This useless girl refused to carry firewood for my son," Adalgo shouted. "I told her to help me warm his pap, and she said she was busy washing her sister's clothes." "She's not your maid," Neka shouted back. Adalgo pushed Neka, and Neka pushed her back. Soon, a full fight broke out. Neighbors had to separate them. That evening, Obina returned. Before Neka could say anything, Adalgo ran to him, crying and saying that Neka had attacked her and threatened to harm her son. Obina didn't ask for the full story. He looked Neka in the eyes, his face as cold as Harmattan wind, and said, "You have overstayed your welcome in this house." "But I built this house with you," Neka whispered. "I don't care," he replied. "Leave, tonight." Neka packed her bags and took her daughters. With nowhere to go, she went to her childhood friend, Auntie Amaka, who gave them a small room to sleep. That night, as they lay on the cold floor, Neka looked at her daughters, held Amarachi's hand, and said, "No matter what happens, we will survive." And survive, they tried. Life at Auntie Amaka's house was not easy. She was a widow with 5 children of her own, living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Still, she gave Neka and her 4 daughters one small room, and shared her food with them. Neka, though tired and heartbroken, refused to be a burden. The next morning, she returned to the village market and tried to sell her fabrics again. But most of her customers had now turned to a doggo, who had taken over Neka's old stall. Days passed. Business was slow. Food was never enough. Amarachi and her sisters began skipping meals, sometimes eating only roasted corn for dinner. Despite this, Amarachi continued helping her mother sell fabrics after school. She tied a piece of cloth around her head, carried a basket, and trekked from house to house. Still, Neka tried to smile, but her strength began to fade. One morning, Amarachi woke up and found her mother unable to rise from the mat. Her eyes were yellow, her breathing shallow. "Mama?" she whispered, shaking her gently. Neka smiled weakly. "I just need rest." But it wasn't just rest. They took her to a small health center in the next village. The nurse there looked worried. "She is not just tired. This woman is very sick. What has she been drinking?" she asked. Amarachi could not answer. She only cried. Days turned to weeks. Neka grew weaker. No one knew what was wrong. They took her to a herbalist, then to a prayer house. Everyone said something different. Liver failure, poison, spiritual attack, curse. Amarachi watched the woman who once carried bundles of fabric on her head now struggle to drink water. One evening, Neka called her daughters to her mat. Her voice was barely a whisper. "My girls," she said, holding Amarachi's hand, "if anything happens to me, go back to your father." "No," Amarachi cried. "We'll manage, Mama. You'll get better." "I don't think I will," Neka said gently. "And you're still children. You can't do this alone." 3 days later, she died. The cry that night shook the walls. The village mourned her, but not for long. On the day of her burial, Obinna stood by her grave with a blank face. He gave no speech. He never shed a tear. After the funeral, he told the girls to return to Auntie Amaka's house. "I have nothing for you," he said. Even as his only son, Obinna Jr., sat on his lap playing with cowries, he didn't look once at his daughters. Auntie Amaka tried to care for them, but she had nothing left to give. So, at just 13, Amarachi became the head of the family. She stopped school to work full-time. She cleaned houses. She hawked vegetables. She carried loads for people in the market. And every coin she made went into buying food for her sisters. They barely survived. But Amarachi was determined. She told herself every day, "I will never be like Mama. I will never depend on a man. I will never marry." Her heart had closed completely. Years passed. Amarachi's hard work began to pay off. She opened a small stall of her own. Then she bought a sewing machine and learned to sew from an elderly tailor. Soon she was making clothes and selling them across villages. People began to notice her beauty and confidence. Suitors came, rich men, handsome men, big men from the city. But Amarachi said the same thing to all of them. "I'm not interested in marriage. Please don't waste your time." Rumors spread. Maybe she's cursed. Maybe she's barren. Maybe she has spiritual husbands. But Amarachi didn't care. Her sisters were now in secondary school. They called her Sister Mother. She made sure they lacked nothing. Not school uniforms, not books, not food. One day, she heard shocking news. Her father, Mazi Obinna, had collapsed in his compound. Word quickly spread. Obinna Jr. had sold the yam plantation, the cocoa farm, and even their family house to gamblers. He had squandered everything on betting and drinks. With nowhere to go and no money left, Obinna had fainted from shock. He was taken to the same health center where Neka once stayed. Amarachi said nothing when she heard it. Oluchi asked, "Sister, should we go and see him?" Amarachi simply replied, "Let's wait till he dies." But deep inside her, her heart was confused. Days later, news came. Obinna had died. He had nothing to his name, not even enough for his burial. Amarachi and her sisters contributed the money, buried him quietly, and left without saying a word to Adago or her son. It was over. Or so she thought. After their father's quiet burial, Amarachi and her sisters returned home and wiped their hands clean of the past. No one from Obinna's side came to say thank you, not even Adago or her son. Amarachi carried on with her sewing business, now more focused than ever. She had bought a second machine and employed a young girl to assist her. People traveled from other villages just to sew with her. She was known for her neat finishing and respectful attitude. Despite her success, Amarachi's heart was locked. Men still came. Teachers, traders, even a pastor, but she remained firm. No marriage. No children, she always said. Then one sunny afternoon, as she returned from delivering clothes to a customer, she met a man who would change everything. He was standing near the market square, trying to fix a flat tire on his bicycle. He looked frustrated. The sun was hot and his shirt was soaked with sweat. Without thinking much, Amarachi approached him. "Do you need help?" she asked. The man looked up, surprised. "I would really appreciate it. The tire is stubborn." Amarachi called a vulcanizer from the other side of the road, and together they helped the man fix it. "Thank you so much," he said. "My name is Somadina. I'm new in this village. I came to see my uncle, who's the new headmaster of St. Mary's School." Amarachi smiled. "I'm Amarachi. I live not far from here." That day, nothing else happened. She walked away, not expecting to see him again. But the next morning, Somadina came to her stall. "Just wanted to say thank you again," he said, holding out a small basket of oranges. "My uncle's wife said it's rude not to show appreciation." Amarachi laughed. "Tell her I said thank you." From that day, he came often, sometimes to drop fruits, sometimes to bring lunch, sometimes just to sit quietly and talk. At first, Amarachi was guarded. She didn't trust men, especially gentle ones. But Somadina never pushed. He spoke softly. He asked about her sewing. He asked about her sisters. He asked how she became so strong. Amarachi shared only a little at first, then a little more. And then one day, without meaning to, she told him everything about her mother, her father, the pain, the hunger, the rejection. Somadina listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't pity her. He just nodded slowly and said, "You're the strongest person I've ever met." That was the first time Amarachi cried in front of a man. Their friendship grew. Villagers noticed. "Amarachi is changing," they said. "Is love doing her strong thing?" One evening, under the moonlight, as they sat outside Amarachi's shop, Somadina said quietly, "Amarachi, I know you don't want marriage, but I need to say this." She looked at him without speaking. "I've never met someone like you. If you ever change your mind, I'd be honored to be the one you marry. I promise I will never hurt you." Amarachi stood up and walked away. Her heart was beating too fast. She didn't sleep well that night. Days passed. She avoided him, refused to collect his oranges, stopped laughing at his jokes. Then one evening, Oluchi said something she wasn't expecting. "Sister, why are you pushing away the only man who truly cares about you?" Amarachi frowned. "How do you know he cares?" "Because when I was sick and you were out of town, he stayed with me at the clinic. He paid for my medicine. He didn't even tell you. He just said, 'Don't worry, Amarachi, with this right now.'" Amarachi was silent. The next morning, she went to look for Somadina. She found him reading under a mango tree. When he saw her, he smiled. "I came to say thank you," she said. "For what?" "For everything." Somadina nodded. "And what about the other thing I said?" Amarachi took a deep breath. "If I ever marry, I won't have children." "Why?" he asked gently. "Because I don't want any child to suffer like I did. I don't want to bring a child into this world and watch their father change overnight." Somadina held her hand. "Then we won't have children. If that's the only way to have you in my life, I will accept it." Tears filled Amarachi's eyes. And that was the beginning. The whole village was in shock. Amarachi, the same girl who once swore never to marry, was now engaged to Somadina, the quiet teacher who captured her heart not with money or big promises, but with patience, understanding, and truth. Some people were happy for her. Others gossiped. She must be desperate. She's getting older. He must have charmed her. But Amarachi paid no attention. The traditional wedding was simple but beautiful. There were no loud drums or crowds, only close family, a few friends, and the village elders. Amarachi wore a red lace dress with coral beads, and for the first time in years, she smiled from her heart. Somadina moved into her house, and life became peaceful. He cooked sometimes. He helped in the shop. In the evenings, they would sit under the mango tree and talk about everything and nothing. Amarachi felt safe. For the first time in her life, she wasn't carrying the world alone. But then something happened that shook her to her core. 2 months into their marriage, Amarachi woke up feeling strange. She was weak, dizzy, and always hungry. At first, she thought it was malaria, but then she missed her period. A quiet panic started in her chest. She went to the health center in the next town and took a test. The nurse came back smiling. "Congratulations, madam. You're pregnant." Amarachi's face dropped. Her hands started shaking. No, it's not possible, she whispered. The nurse thought it was tears of joy. Twins, even! The scan shows two healthy sacs. But Amarachi didn't feel joy. She felt fear, deep, heavy fear. What if the babies were girls? What if Somadina changed? What if he became like her father? What if the love turned cold? She didn't tell him immediately. For days, she walked around with a heavy heart. She stared at herself in the mirror, remembering her mother, the late nights, the tears, the hunger, the betrayal. One night, as they ate dinner in silence, Somadina looked at her and said, "What's going on, Amma? You've been distant." She looked at him, trying to hide her tears. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. He dropped his spoon, his eyes wide with surprise. Then he slowly stood up and walked over to her. "You're pregnant?" he repeated. She nodded. "Why do you look sad?" he asked. "Because you promised? You said we wouldn't have children." He knelt beside her and held her hand. "Ama, I didn't promise not to have children. I promised to love and protect you, no matter what." "But what if they're girls?" she said, tears rolling down her face. "What if you change?" Somadina pulled her into a hug. "Amma, if we have 5 daughters, I'll thank God for giving us 5 queens. I will love them the way you should have been loved. I will never be like your father." Amarachi cried and cried that night, not from fear, but from the deep, painful relief that someone truly loved her beyond her scars. Months passed. The pregnancy wasn't easy. There were days she could barely walk. But Somadina was always there, massaging her feet, cooking for her, cleaning the house. Then the big day came. Amarachi gave birth to 2 beautiful, healthy baby girls. The entire village came to see them. Even those who once gossiped about her were now singing praises. Somadina named them Chimamanda, "My God will not fail me," and Ugochi, "God's glory." When Amarachi held her daughters in her arms, she finally understood something her mother once told her. Children are not the pain. The pain is how the world treats them. And she was determined to make their world better. She returned to her shop months later, stronger and more confident. Her business grew. She started training young girls for free, especially those from poor homes. She became a voice for abandoned women and single mothers. One day, a man came to her shop with his teenage daughter. "My daughter wants to learn how to sew," he said. "They say you are the best." Amarachi looked at the girl and smiled. "She's welcome. But I have only one rule here. No one will make her feel small." That day, as the girl joined the other apprentices, Amarachi looked at her daughters playing nearby, her husband laughing in the background, and she smiled to herself. Fear had once lived in her heart, but now, love had taken over. Years passed. Amarachi's sewing shop became one of the biggest in the region. She trained over 40 girls, many of whom started their own businesses and became breadwinners for their families. People from nearby towns sent their daughters to her because they trusted her not just to teach fashion, but to build confidence and self-worth. She was no longer just Amarachi the tailor. She was now Mama Chimamanda, the woman who rose again, hope for the forgotten. But even with all the success, Amarachi never forgot where she came from. Sometimes when the sun was low and the breeze blew gently through the shop curtains, she would sit quietly and remember her mother, Neka, the woman who gave everything and asked for nothing, the woman who carried burdens in silence and loved her daughters with everything she had. One day, as Amarachi sat outside her compound watching her daughters plait each other's hair, her sister Oluchi came to visit with good news. "Sister, I got the scholarship. I'll be going to the university in the city next month." Amarachi stood up and hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. All her sacrifices were worth it. Her sisters were now thriving. Kosiso had become a nurse. Chisom was learning photography. The girls she once carried on her back were now standing on their own feet. That evening, after everyone had eaten and the girls were asleep, Somadina sat beside Amarachi under the stars. "You've built an empire, Amma," he said, smiling. "Your mother would be so proud." "I hope so," Amarachi replied. "Sometimes I still hear her voice, telling me to be strong." "You've done more than be strong," Somadina said. "You've turned pain into power." She looked at him, eyes filled with emotion. "I didn't think this kind of life was possible for someone like me. After everything, I thought I was broken." "You weren't broken," he said gently. "You were buried. But now, you've bloomed." And he was right. Amarachi didn't just survive. She blossomed. She became a symbol of hope for every girl who was told she wasn't enough, for every woman who was thrown out because she gave birth to daughters, for every child who watched their mother cry silently at night. Her life became a story that mothers told their daughters. If Amarachi can rise, you can too. One day, Chimamanda, now 6 years old, came to her with a question. Mama, why don't you cry like other women? Amarachi laughed softly. Because I cried enough when I was young. Now I choose to smile. Even when you're sad. Yes, she said, kissing her daughter's forehead. Because you and your sister are my joy. And truly, they were. The love she once feared now lived freely in her home. Soft, strong, and unshakable. Amarachi had kept her promise. She didn't allow history to repeat itself. She broke the cycle. She rewrote her story. And in doing so, she honored the memory of her mother and gave her daughters a new beginning. This is the end of this story. The moral lesson of this story is no pain lasts forever, and no woman should ever be judged by the gender of her children. With courage, love, and determination, even the deepest wounds can heal. Amarachi's story reminds us that true strength is not just in surviving hard times, but in choosing not to let them harden your heart. Thank you for listening to this story. Please don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs hope today. We love and appreciate you. See you in the next story.